Welcome to the March 2024 State of the Union. Going over some of our caging results. We did see a decline year over year with revenue and gifts down 8% and 11% respectively. I will say that we were seeing a bit more, headwinds in the industry forecasting the course ahead. And I have some slides in here. So Bruce Spiegel from the Winterberry Group put in some slides around direct marketing overall that we'll also talk about in the context of nonprofits. I would say forecasting the course ahead, at the risk of doing some cheap plugging, which I'm not averse to on this call. But we did a report called the Morecast Report that's available on our website under the education section, with predictions from a lot of folks around the industry or around more on the industry. I will say that there wasn't a lot of very sort of concrete, we will be down 5% on this sort of revenue, but it was more conceptually, we're going to be seeing this in ethical storytelling and an increase in omni-channel acknowledgements, and here's where AI and machine learning are going and those sorts of things. So I'll steer clear of those topics, except to say that one that I think is going to come out of there that will have a significant impacts on our industry in Q3, Q4 is the election, not for donations, but for ad spend. The amount of digital media and CTV that's going into the presidential election or projected to go into the presidential election in some of these battleground states and some of the Senate gubernatorial races is going to be significant, and there will be a crowding out effect as we get into October, early November, even in September, August. And so trying to spread out your digital and your CTV earlier in the year, where you might have been able to count on, Q4 is going to pull me through. I think the residuals on those costs are going to be significant. I hate to say this, but we may be in another year where the election the debates over who won the election will not end on election day or nearly thereafter, and we may see advertising going well into November around some of these issues. So those will be some that we'll talk about a little bit more in the Bruce Spiegel section, but those are some headwinds that we're definitely seeing. That said, one of the interesting parts that we're seeing, I know this looks dour, but remember it's on caging data, and we are also seeing about a 10% decrease in the amount mailed out. And so we're working on our benchmarking right now. I bet a lot of you have been contacted. If you're not and you'd like to be in our next benchmarking report, let me know. There's still time. But what we're trying to do there is talk about honest to goodness response rates so that we have volume going in that talks about these gifts being caused. And so I think we are seeing people pulling back in mail and pulling back to a safer distance. And that's part of why you're seeing mail revenue going down. The other thing that I was trying to say on this slide and then totally forgot about was we're seeing more variability in this number than we've had before, where more organizations are actually growing than had been previously. And that's having in large part to do with the volume that's going out. Those who are continuing to mail are seeing a bit of a turn if they're focusing using data. As you might have guessed, if revenues go down 8% and gifts go down 11%, then you have a 4% increase in average gift. And so you are seeing that. We're thinking that's large, not that people are necessarily giving more, but people are mailing the people who can give more, and the people who can give less, as we're working to optimize for the mail side of things. Any questions on any of that? Forecasting the course ahead on this. We're not saying certainly mail indiscriminately, but what we're trying to focus on is how do you get more out of each package that you are sending? And so that's things like audience optimization. We've working on white paper and webinar about this, but we have a few clients that have gone from RFM to totally modeled solutions using Simeo Cloud that are seeing really good results because of not only the improvement in the audiences that are selected for each mail piece, but in the donor journeys that people are able to accomplish on the outside of it. Another thing that we're seeing is increased customization and personalization. Cost on that does increase a little bit per package, but those types of customizations really increase the amount you get out of each package. And so those are a couple of things that we're working with a lot of clients on, making mail more profitable. Mentioned last month that the test of the month club that I started back when I was at MAD. So I guess it's not venerated, but venerable enough to be called venerable. We know was at TNPA. Now we're bringing it back over to more. And so wanted to share an SMS landing page test because this one was interesting and not necessarily intuitive. So for texting campaign, our more digital folks thought that a giving modal, and this client's been anonymized, but giving modal will increase conversion rates because yes, you have more of an explanation on a traditional mobile-friendly donor page, but if you have this giving modal in place there, it makes the giving process smoother, less friction, less real estate used around the form that you're trying to get people to submit. And so you can see the control here on the left and the test on the right. So there's no image, there's no what it's for. It is, you've seen the text, you click, do you want to make a one-time gift or a monthly gift? No honor memorial, strip it down to its basics. And that giving modal had a much higher conversion rate, went up from 33% to 38%, also had a higher average gift. Higher average gift difference was not statistically significant, but the conversion rate was. And so for this client, we rolled out the modals for all SMS campaigns. And this was in the Thanksgiving Giving Tuesday end of year sweep, and successful in that. So hopefully that's of interest to some folks, but the quick and dirty on that test. Teased this earlier. I have to give full credit to Bruce Spiegel and the Winterberry Group, who look at direct marketing. They consult with a number of clients on this, including the U.S. Postal Service, and have done some great reports. So I gave a cheap plug for a more product earlier. I'll give a cheap product for a plug for not necessarily a friendly competitor, certainly in the Winterberry Group, because they do some very strong analyses. So looking at that, reviewing 2023, you did see a significant increase in offline spending of 20% and only and that 2% CAGR year over year from 2020 to 2023, and a fall off from 22 to 23. They were actually projecting an increase in offline and did not. One of the things that they say was amiss, because they're, like all good thinkers, they're self-critical on these things. They said that they did not project direct mail going down as much as it did. It suffered actually the most in advertising, more even than linear TV. And one of the things that they talk about that I'll mention later on is that with sports coming over from linear TV to connected TV and those types of streaming products, one of the last moats that caused people to have cable packages and satellite packages and that sort of linear terrestrial TV is falling. You can have live events on streaming. And so the move over there has accelerated somewhat. Do see increases in things like experiential and sponsorship. And I can say from the nonprofit side, the event side, not necessarily the 5K walks, but we're doing an event at a church where they pass the hat for a particular nonprofit, or we're doing a concert in concert with a performing artist, and they have an ask as part of the conference, and it's sponsored in part by a nonprofit. Those we are seeing growth out of. The direct mail volume decrease that we're seeing there is the largest pullback since the Great Recession. And the shockingly, when you increase the price of something dramatically, its use goes down. That's something that is news to the US Postal Service in some cases, and something that's been reinforced. They thought they had price inelasticity because of their monopoly power, and this would tend to indicate that they do not. Overall spend was actually up. It was just a shift from DM to other channels. And so when you see um, so this is what digital looked like with everything going up, and leading among those is in CTV. That connected TV increase was we were optimists on it because we do a lot of CTV and have found it to be very successful. But we weren't this optimistic on how much it would grow and how much its effectiveness would stay in place as part of that omni-channel mix. And I to be a part of that mix. But what we're seeing more and more, and we're also working on some thought leadership about this, is that mail is a channel of influence, but then someone will go online to transact. And similar to CTV, where someone will see a CTV ad and go online to ask, you have to get very good at that attribution and not have and be able to say, this is what's causing that. However, as you'll see in this presentation, that is a bit challenging to be able to do. We're able to do it between mail and online fairly coherently because you can say, hey, these people didn't get digital ads. They did, however, get a mail piece. And oh, look at the people transacting online from that group. In fact, under the age of 50 for some organizations, a majority of gifts that come in from mail come in online, not through the mailing back of checks, because some folks are like, check, what's a check? Or I last used a check to pay a plumber. And now they even take credit cards. We had a plumbing problem the other day. So I know of what I speak. Data has been an increasingly significant part of this. As people are investing in data, it's making these spends more efficient, and it's making things like the shift from linear to CTV very strong. If you have strong data, you can say, I want to target these particular people rather than I want to target the world at large. That said, every day donors die and non-donors are born. And so we are continually working on solutions like linear TV that are going to convert people and get people to make their first gift to an organization, because we know how valuable those first gift or sometimes only gift donors can be. If they are dedicated to you and their experience is with you, that becomes much harder to dislodge. Other trends that Bruce talked about, generative AI, that there's high business production from it, creative production from it, not protection, my apologies on that, but low consumer adoption. People know it, they've tried it, but they're not using to build it into their everyday life yet. They project in 2024, but significant adoption on the business side, and I'm sure you're all feeling that as well. Talked a little bit about political spending. The other thing that I didn't mention is adjacency worried. Will your ad run right next to the ad of a political figure that you may not agree with? Will it run next to content that is from Troll Farm or Content Farm or that you would not agree with? We've talked on these calls before about how, if you're not careful, programmatic ads can be placed across from, vaccine disinformation, election disinformation. And so as those modalities ramp up for the election, going to be a greater concern as we go out. Talked about sports programming. One that I'm paying attention to is that B2B marketing is more like consumer marketing, where people have figured out, hey, the person buying from me is a person, not necessarily all of the organization. And so look for more personalized and customized communications coming from more to a mailbox, TV, email box, all of those sorts of things near you. Attribution, he said, it is always never the year of attribution. It's hard, and some of the areas, like some of the end users say, we benefit from not having really strong attribution. So we're working with folks like our CTV providers to be able to say, hey, can you help us attribute back? but it is challenging. And so we can, if you're working with more, we can help design tests to be able to attribute in a broad way, even if you're not able to attribute particular revenue and see where spend in each channel is going up. More and more, we're seeing a 1+1=3 effect, where bringing in additional channels helps raise all boats. The offline marketing spend, they're predicting direct mail will go up slightly this year, in large part due to this political cycle. DM is a significant part of that. Linear TV is going to be a significant part of that, but you're going to see even more of that on CTV once political figures find out that they can say one message to one group of people and another group message to another group of people without the other ones knowing about it. Yeah, that's catnip. So we're definitely going to see CTV with significant growth there and increase in investment in data on the call. Any questions on any of that? Okay, so then talking a little bit about our friends over at the USPS. This is for October through December, their Q4, but you can see that this first class delivery, in particular, the 3 to 5 day fiscal year data is really poor in terms of deliverability nationwide and district by district. All of these scores are significantly lower than they were last year during October to December. All but 2 districts had slower mail than last year. And the national 3 to 5 day mail went down from this 21.8 to the 70.5% on-time deliverability. And you may say, hey, I'm sending out marketing mail. Why does this apply to me? When a person puts a stamp on a return envelope, it becomes first class delivery. And so we're seeing slower and slower mail back to our response management facilities. And you've probably seen these response curves continue to get extended as the mail service becomes more challenged in these deliverability. So marketing mail is doing better, but first class is overall suffering. In particular, first class single piece is looking at a 69% on-time performance. So flashing back to in 2021, the USPS went to Congress, went to the Postal Authority and said, as part of our Delivering for America plan, we're going to have 95% of our mail and shipping products there on time. And you may look at that and go, well, 69% is a little bit lower than 95%. And in fact, even the Postal Commission didn't believe that the USPS was going to be able to achieve this 95% on-time rate, even with their deliverability. And so, as we've said often on these calls, any business that says, I am going to increase my costs and decrease my service levels, those are two strategies that generally don't go together. You can do one or the other, but generally not both. So Postal Service is challenged. We're challenged by them, but we want to make sure that we're still using mail effectively here and understanding that these revenues may not be coming in at the same time as they used to. Question in the chat, with the delays in first class deliveries, that coming a push down strain on BRE delivery, which isn't first class? I believe to some extent it is, but BREs are actually doing a little bit better than first class mail. I would anticipate there may be some rollover stress. We didn't see it in the October-December numbers, but I do know that the snowstorms in January, we saw a greater effect of that in our response facilities than the Postal Service reported. You would go to their webpage and say, oh, we have a bit of a challenge in Missouri, we have a bit of a challenge in Virginia, but things are generally rolling okay. They weren't in terms of deliverability, and I think that'll come through in the May, I guess it would be about May numbers that they'll be releasing on the quarter that we're in right now. And so you would you would think there wouldn't be this push down strain because the advantage of going to a response management facility is it's a route that everyone has to run simultaneously. You're already delivering mail off at that house, and because of the volume decreases, you would think there wouldn't be these pressures coming in. However, because the Postal Service is shifting so much of its capacity from mail over to packages to compete in a market where it doesn't have a monopoly, they are being challenged in fulfilling, in my mind, their original mission. So you would think there wouldn't be a push down strain, but I think we are seeing it to some extent. Any other questions? Okay, then we're into the potpourri section, which, as you know, those with a who don't like a little bit of nonsense in the day, this is the time where you can drop off the call safely. So one of the advantages of there are many advantages to artificial intelligence and machine learning. We see a lot of them with SimioCloud. I'm using them with generative AI, and it's been just transformational. But one of the interesting parts of it is you can study stuff quickly that no one would have ever studied before. And so if you go to titledrops.net, you can go in and see they've cataloged every time a movie says the name of a movie in the movie itself. So this is a rather infamous one from the Will Smith version of Suicide Squad, but they go through all of these sorts of things. And so you can find the moment in Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring, where they say, "It shall be the Fellowship of the Ring." And bringing this up because we have a new champion just last year in the number of title drops in the movie itself. You can come off of pause or put into the chat, but special fake internet points to the first person who can tell me what movie had the most title name drops of any movie ever, according to this database. And we have someone in chat. Christopher Needles wins for the first mention of Barbie with 271 mentions of the name Barbie in the movie. Yes, if you go to titledrops.net, you can see they've done an analysis. And if the title of your movie involves a character in that movie, it's far more likely to have a title drop. Also, if your movie is shorter, Barbie has the additional advantage of scenes where people literally say, "Hi, Barbie, hi, Barbie, hi, Barbie, hi, Barbie." You can tell why I wasn't in the movie. And so, interestingly, there is no correlation that they found between the number of title drops in the movie and the rating of that movie. Also in the nonsense section, this may be new to, this may be old hat for some of you. This was a new find for me. Wikipedia has a list of humorous units of measure that are used across the world. My favorite is the millihelen. There's the poem that says, "Helen was the face that launched 1,000 ships." And so a millihelen is the unit of beauty necessary to launch one ship. So interesting there. I do an internal version of this on our for our more folks, and I hit this at about the 50-minute mark. Microcentury John von Neumann, it's so it's 1/1,000,000th of a century. And John von Neumann said that 52 minutes and 35 seconds is the longest that a lecture should be. And so I hit it right about at the microcentury mark. But interestingly, some of these intersect. A Warhol is 15 minutes of fame. So a kilo Warhol is, if you're famous for 10.42 days, that's about the same time as a Scaramucci, which is the amount of time that Anthony Scaramucci was press secretary a few years back. And so even humorous units of measure do have their own conversion rates. That's what I had. Any questions? I know there was one. If I had to recommend over the next 30 to 60 days, y'all will need to monitor X or strategize about Y. What would my recommendation looking at my crystal ball? There are some that I would say fall into the necessary condition categories. One of the predictions that I didn't put into the Morecast report, but I had personally because um, I didn't want to poo-poo generative AI. But if your organizations do not have a generative AI statement about how you will use it, I predict that at some point this year, there will be a colossal disaster involving a nonprofit and the use of generative AI. And that's not too far off. My alma mater got into trouble last year for using ChatGPT to generate a sympathy email to the to all of the students about the Michigan State shootings. And I believe even a dean had to resign over that. And so if you don't have a generative AI statement and you aren't, get that in place to help protect yourself. If you need help, let us know. We can help with that. We have our own. And we're, working with Microsoft on the back end of our generative AI systems, working on product creation and all of those sorts of things. But that sort of protection is really valuable. Then assuming you have that in place, I would say over the next 30 to 60 days, I would ask a few questions. First, if there are any channels that you should be going into that you aren't in already, things like CTV, a lot of organizations haven't looked at and are especially profitable. I would look at how you can customize or personalize pieces, even if it's to say, I usually do it like this, and I'm going to make one change based on a bit of data, parent versus non-parent or Republican versus Democrat, just any sort of test that you can run on those sorts of things, I think would be incredibly valuable. And then the third thing that I would be looking at over the next 30 to 60 days is I'm really preaching about, we think about, when I came into direct marketing, we were constantly thinking about who should get this communication. I think the extent to which we can turn that sideways and say, what communications should this person receive? Starting with the person and working out, creating those real donor journeys, is incredibly valuable. And even if it's a matter of, in this piece, I'm going to create one additional version for potential higher dollar donors or pet owners or whatever that is, trying that additional customization is going to be helpful in the long run because it's going to help you in all addressable channels. And it'll tell you some roads you may not want to go down. It may be that there are no differences for your organization, pet owners, non-pet owners, that sort of thing. And so those would be the tests that I would be looking at to help set me up for the long term. Any other questions? Any other thoughts on that? Because I am not the be all end all on any of this. Things that you're looking at over the next 30 to 60.